3D Basics class. It's week 5. Welcome. You've made it this far. Today, topics include a couple of questions that came up over the past week from students that were great questions, and I want to address for everybody. And some of those things lead perfectly into our main topics for today. The first one is modifiers. What is a modifier? How do you use modifiers? We'll look at a couple of specific examples. And then topic number 2 is sculpting, which leads into your assignment 3, which we'll also talk about today. I got some hand action happening today. So buckle up and let's go over to Blender. It's a special daylight edition of your lecture today. Okay, Blender. New general file. So the question was, one of the questions that came up was, how do I? Well, here. So let me get this set up for you. Let me pause. So say this was like your desk assignment. And there was like, these are 2 of the legs. I know this is very crude. But how would you create a cut on the bottom leg without doing a loop cut all the way through? And my first answer would be, you should probably just do a loop cut all the way around, because it's creating nice geometry for you. Because remember what we talked about with n-gons, that if you were to just cut this bottom face here, you'd have a vertice right here at this point, a vertex, and then you would have a 5-sided shape up here. So let me just show you that as an example. So let me go tab for edit mode. Well, let me undo. Yeah, okay. Tab for edit mode. Let me do the knife tool, and then we just knife from here to here. Click and then spacebar to apply. Oops, and that actually didn't do exactly what I wanted to. Click. Oh, okay. Actually, hold on. Sorry, undo. I need to start exactly on this line here. So if I cut here and cut there, spacebar. There we go. Okay, so let's say I cut this in half. Let me go W for my selection tool and 1. Oh, I didn't start my keystroke thing. Okay, here we go. So I just made this cut. And there's a new vertex here and a new vertex here. Now what we have done is we've created an n-gon up here, because this face, if I go 3 for face select, this face here now has 5 sides. So, or 5 sides and 5 vertexes. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and a new one here. So if I were to take this vertex and move it around, the computer doesn't necessarily know how do I render this shape with 5 sides, because clearly there has to be some angles somewhere in there, but how does it render it? So just the dangers of n-gons. I think one of the other methods this student had experimented with, so let me undo all this, undo that loop cut, was, okay, well, so let's say I add a loop cut, Control R, do a loop cut here like that. What if I just wanted to delete this edge here? So we talked about, let me go have my selection tool 2 for edge select. We talked about just using the delete key before, but if you do delete and do edge like this, it's going to delete this face. So there's actually a difference between delete, and let me undo that, and if I hit the delete key, there's other options here. It's dissolve. So delete is kind of removes it and anything sort of adjacent to it. So dissolve actually attempts to kind of resolve this without deleting anything else. So if I do dissolve edges like this, it's kept it there. It's made this one solid face, but once again, we're left with the problem of an n-gon. Which, it's you got to kind of pick your battles. Sometimes it's necessary, but I would say do your best to not have n-gons. Okay, so that's dissolve. So just understand the difference between dissolve and delete. So even if we do, if I do 1 for vertex, and I select this vertex here, and I go hit the delete key and dissolve vertice. So it does its best to kind of keep it all the same, but now because there isn't a vertice here, it's got to kind of remove the edges that are connected to it. And now we have a new face here that is a little bit of a monstrosity because it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, I counted that one twice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 vertices. This is technically an octagon. Yes, it's a rectangle, but it has 8 sides. So and the computer has to treat it as such when it's rendering it. Okay. The other question that I got that was a really good question was, let me undo all of this, go back. Hopefully I have enough undos. Yes. So let's say these were the legs of a desk, and I was being fancy, and I wanted to like rotate one, like kind of angle it this way, but then I wanted to have the other one rotate the same amount but in the opposite direction. I'll show you a way now, but actually the method that we're using, or sorry, I will show you a method, which is a modifier. I'm giving it away a little bit, that can actually really help you with all this stuff. Okay, so, but just for example, just so you can see an alternative way of doing it. So I should probably get an orthographic view, a front view like that. So I hit 1 on my number pad. And if I want to rotate this way like this, before I do anything, look at my, what are they? There should be a name for this. I don't know the name. I think it's I call it the action menu. That whenever you perform an action in Blender, this is like the most recent action. And take note of the angle here. So it's minus 41. So maybe I'll even just make it a square number like minus 41. Whoops, not 14. Minus 41 like that. Hit enter in the Z direction. And then what you can do, whoa. Sorry, then what you can do is select, whoops, click on the wrong window. Then what you can do is select the other one here, go back to your front view, just remember that number, and then go R-rotate like this, get it close or whatever, and then just type that value in, 41. So like if this one was negative 41, this one would be positive 41. And so that way you know that you have the same angle on each side. This action menu, I believe, let's see, there is a way to bring it up. Oh, here it is. Adjust last operation. This is it here. So if for whatever reason you click off of this, or you hit the tab key, or you go into object mode or whatever, you can bring up that menu again by going to edit, adjust last operation. Or I guess the shortcut is F9, adjust last operation. And so that should hopefully adjust last, toggle edit mode. Oh, so yeah, I guess you do have to be careful, because really including toggling edit mode, that counts as an operation. So, but just be careful. Okay, but I have a better way to do this exact thing, and I'll show you why. So let me show you how. Let me delete this. Okay, first a little bit of explanation. Modifiers. We're talking about modifiers. So a modifier is something that you attach to an object that changes it in a variety of ways, but it is non-destructive, which is the key thing. And so if you've done other programs like Photoshop is, I guess, the main example I can think of. If you have any experience in Photoshop, there are certain things that you can do that are non-destructive, that don't change the original image itself. It's sort of like an effect that you put on top of it. Same thing with modifiers. So it's modifying it, but you can always take it off and it goes back to its original state. So let's look at a modifier in Blender, and that's the mirror modifier. So first we need an object. Shift A, I'm going to add a cube back into the scene here. Okay, so modifiers tab, right hand side of the window here, your properties window. We have our basic object properties here, all the transform data. Right below it is this blue wrench. This is modifier properties. Okay. If you hit this, actually let me move my face out of the way because there's a bunch. If you hit the add modifier drop down here, you can see there's a ton. We've got some of these I still don't even know what they do. A bunch of these things: generate, array, bevel, boolean, build, decimate, skin, screw, remesh, deform, shrink wrap, smooth, wave, physics, close, collision. Blah, blah, blah. So all of these things are effects that you can put on top of your object to change it, alter it in some way that you can always take off and return it to its original state. So, but before you put one on, whoops, I accidentally put the cloth modifier on here. Let me, I think, can I just delete it? Yep, I hit the delete key. Okay, let me move my face back down here. Actually, maybe I'll be over here today. Okay, so follow with me. Cube. Let's get into front view like this, one on my number pad. Or if you don't have the number pad, you can go view, viewpoint, front. Let's do a loop cut, Control R. Actually, sorry, we need to be in edit mode. So I hit tab, I'm in edit mode. You can see it up here. And Control R, loop cut, I want it to be right in the middle. And don't slide it around. Rather than sliding, I'm going to right click and to make sure my loop cut is dead center there. Yes, okay. I just don't like that my face is, well, yeah, I can be up here. This is fine. Okay. And also now, sorry, I know it doesn't matter, guys. I'm so sorry. Here we go. The suspense is killing you. Okay, let's turn on X-ray select, toggle X-ray select. I want to select, I want 3 for a face select, and I want to select all the faces on the left. So I've got X-ray select on. I hit this little toggle. It's Alt-Z for me, but actually Alt-Z is keybound to a different program, so I actually can't use it. And I'm selecting all of the faces on the left here like this. And I'm in front view here. So I'm going to hit delete, and I'm not going to dissolve the faces. I actually want to delete the faces. So I'm going to delete faces. So we're left with half of a cube, exactly half. Because I know that I put the loop cut directly in the center. So actually, even if I turn off X-ray select, you can see it's like a hollow half of a box. Okay. Let's go back into object mode. Tab key. Okay, let's add a modifier. And we're going to add, under generate here, it is the mirror modifier. Okay. So you can see that now our box is complete. How does that happen? It's because our box is being mirrored across the x-axis. So look a little closer. So now we have the mirror modifier on here. So you can actually like twirl it open and close like this. You can signal which axes you want this to be mirrored on. So if I turn off X, you can have it be on the Y, but it won't actually look any different because it's not on it's already mirrored across the Y-axis. So I guess if I tab and moved it like this and I did Y. Oh no, I guess it is. It still wouldn't do it because it's local. Anyway, we want it mirrored in the X. We want it mirrored in the X like this. So make sure X is selected. So now anything we do to one side of this, it's going to be mirrored on the other side. So very simply, if I go tab for edit mode like this, 3 for face select, and I hit this outside face here, and I extrude, it's gonna be mirrored exactly on the other side. So if I hit the bottom one here, this can come down like that. And now, so like if I wanted to do that, the angle on the feet, on the foot of this desk, I can rotate like this, and it's perfectly mirrored on the other side. So magic mirror. One thing to note here, clipping. Without clipping checked, the halves of this are not going to be connected. So if I go 1 for vertex select, and I select one of these middle vertexes, you can like open it up like this and cross over, which can be problematic. And that's because clipping isn't enabled. If you if you hover over this, it says prevent vertices from going through the mirror during transform. So if you hit that, now it's glued together. So even if I try to pull these apart, it just moves it up and down. So clipping is probably going to be your friend here. And so yeah, you can just continue modeling your desk. So extrude this out, add a loop cut here like this, slide that out, maybe select this one again, 3, extrude this one down, 1, R rotate. Bada bing, bada boom. You got a cool desk. And it's mirrored perfectly. Nice. So the mirror modifier is super handy. In fact, anytime you're doing something that's symmetrical, you should just use the mirror modifier for sure. Now, here's what I meant about non-destructive. And this isn't necessarily a great example. The next example I'll show you is good for why it's not destructive. But if I remove this modifier, so in the modifiers tab here, bottom right, on our mirror modifier, you can hit the X here and remove this modifier. And now we're left with the original half. So it's non-destructive. The original part is there, and we're kind of back to how it was originally. I'll just stick it back on, add mirror modifier, turn on clipping, boom, there it is. Or you can do, so if you're like pleased with this, and you've done all the symmetry that you want on an object, and you want to actually make it part of it, so maybe there's other details you want to add on one side but not the other side, you'll need to do something that we call baking. And the term baking will come up a lot in 3D, but what baking is essentially like making it real. and I think why it's called baking is like, imagine you're making a cake, and you put in your flour and your eggs and your milk and your butter and your sugar, and all of those ingredients, well, man, now in my head, my analogy is already falling apart. But it's still just like all of those ingredients mixed together until you put it in the oven and bake it. And then that's when it becomes a cake. And once it's baked, you can't take all those ingredients out because they're already mixed together and they're already baked into a cake. You can't unbake a cake. So when you bake something in 3D, it's making it permanent. It's transforming it into a new thing that can't go backwards. So you'll see the term bake in several places here in Blender. You'll actually see the word bake in a few of the places, but that's what that's kind of the meaning of the term. So here, if we wanted to like bake this modifier, you would hit this little drop down here and say apply. It says apply modifier and remove from stack. So if you select that, the modifier is gone. And if I go back to my object here and hit tab, it's now one whole thing. This is the object now. And everything that was part of the mirror modifier on the left here, we can now manipulate independently. You know? Oh, man, is this turning into an elephant? So, and if you wanted to add, some more details, I insert faces, I extrude in like this, I don't know. I insert faces, I don't know. Anyway, so that's the mirror modifier. Super duper handy, and it's a good one to start with, especially if you're doing something symmetrical. Okay, I'm gonna tab and delete this, and let's talk about our next modifier, which is the subdivision surface modifier. Okay, so excuse me, the subdivision surface modifier is maybe the second most, well, subdivision surface and mirror modifier are definitely like super duper useful. So real quick, let me add a cube into the scene here. So what subdivision surface modifier does is it is going to kind of round out everything. It's going to kind of smooth, I'm using smooth in air quotes here, and round your entire object. I just have a cube in here, and I'm going to add, I'm just going to add the modifier, and let's just see what it does. So under generate, it's down here at the bottom, subdivision surface. Okay. So what has it done? It's kind of crumpled it up a little bit, and it's subdivided each of the sides into 4 smaller segments, and then also kind of rounded it out. On our modifier window over here, so we have levels viewport is 1, levels of render is 2. So this is showing us that how we're seeing it now, it's been subsurface divided 1 time, but if you were to render it, it would do it 2 times. So actually real quick, let me just do F12. So if I F12, each of those 4 sides was divided an additional 4 times and rounded as well. So now each face of the cube now has 16 sides and is pretty much looks like a sphere now. Interesting. So you can up the levels viewport here by just clicking this button, or advancing this. So this is 2 levels of subdivision surface, subdivisions, 3 levels, 4 levels. So you can see, like, the more levels you do, like, this cube is now essentially a sphere. 6 levels of subdividing is too many. So you should never do that many. Really, 2 or 3 is probably the most you'll ever need to smooth something out, and I'll show you why. In computing, in 3D rendering, in gaming, keeping your levels, the number of polygons low is key, and so you're always trying to strike a delicate balance of how many polygons can I use to have a really good model or a really good experience and not tip the performance of the computer hardware past its point. So those of you that are gamers out there, it's like, we got to keep the FPS high. Like, the performance has to be good, so we need to keep the poly count low. So that's why a lot of times pro gamers that play Call of Duty or whatever, they'll turn their graphics settings down so that it's more responsive and faster. So it's sort of like, how great can we make it look and still keep the performance high? So anyway, that's just a consideration, which is why when you're doing subdivision surface, you should never crank up your subdivision levels like this, because there are other ways to do it. Right now, so we're in object mode. We have 2 levels of subdivision on our object, and right click, and this very top option here is shade smooth. So it says render and display faces smooth using interpolated vertex normals. That's fancy speak for it's going to try to make it look smooth. And it did a pretty good job. Now, note, to the trained eye, you can still see that there's flat edges around the outside here, and there are places kind of along the bottom here where it just doesn't quite look right. But honestly, like, all things considered, it's pretty good. And the best thing about it is this is like a round, smooth ball, but it only actually has 6 sides. So actually, I can show you. There's a menu here. If you go to here, this one, viewport overlays, this little drop down overlays, you can turn on statistics. No, okay, it doesn't actually calculate it as such. It does say that there's 96, but still, like 96. Many like models of things have tens of thousands of polygons, and this has less than 100. So anyway, that's just a little context for you. I can turn off statistics there. I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah. Anyway, shade smooth. So what shade smooth does, and it said something about normal index something normals, but it basically kind of turns. So actually, let me right click and do shade flat again, so you can see the difference. So what shade flat does is, like, every flat polygon has the same amount of shading. It's all the same shade. So within a polygon, it's all shaded, and so this, it makes it look flat, perfectly flat. But rather, what shade smooth does is it takes all of those and it just kind of blends the shading of them together, so it appears smooth. It's not going to round out the edges along the side like this, and you can see that there are some places, and I already mentioned this, but where it doesn't look perfect. So it's sort of like, how many you need enough polygons to make a shade smooth look normal, or look good. I should be careful of saying the word normal, but you're still keeping your polygon count low. So if I do a F12 render, yes, you can see, like, it looks like the shading actually looks really nice, except for there's a couple little points around here that just don't quite do it for me. Anyway, okay. So that's shade smooth. So if you're wanting to do something that's like smooth and round, you should pretty much always have shade smooth on, unless you're wanting to go for like something that is kind of old school retro polygonal look. You would probably shade flat, but I would do shade smooth. Or unless it's something that is truly is flat, then definitely just keep it flat. Okay, shade smooth, shade flat. Okay, subdivision surface modifier. So let me delete this. So notice, okay, so I have shade smooth on this cube, so you can see that with only a couple of faces, it starts to be kind of funky, because like clearly this is a cube, but it's trying to like remove this corner here with the shading, and it just like looks funky. So that's why you need to have enough polygons for shade smooth to work. Let's shade flat again. Okay, keyboard shortcuts. To do so, you can always just select an object and do add modifier and subdivision surface here. But because this is a pretty common one, there is a keyboard shortcut for it. So if you, for me, it's hold down the control key and the numbers along the top row. So control 1 is 1 level of subdivision. Control 2 is 2 levels. Control 3 is 3, 4, 5, 6. I think that's the most you can do. Actually, the shortcut only goes to 5, but you can go to 6. But control 2 is usually a good place to start. Okay, now let's add a shade smooth to this. Let's talk about using this in edit mode. So tab. When I'm in edit mode, you can see the original shape that is being subdivided kind of as a ghost here. So like if I do 1 for vertex select and I grab this face here, I can G move it and you can kind of see how it's changing the shape underneath. Or like if I take this face here, oops, 3 for face select, whoops, not 4, 3, and I select this one and I E extrude, you can kind of see what this does to the shape underneath. So the subdivision surface is it's subdividing and rounding out. So it always kind of is, well, it ends up being a little bit smaller. To kind of illustrate this difference just a little bit more, delete that, Shift A, cube here, and I'm gonna just like GX move this over here, Shift A, add a cube here, move that. So like this one here, I'm gonna subdivide, Control 2, and this one here, I'm just gonna tab and subdivide like this. Twice, subdivide. So, a regular subdivide is actually just cutting the faces into 4 pieces, but the subdivision surface is cutting and rounding. Okay, delete, Shift A, mesh cube, and Control 2. Okay, so tab. So like when you're editing something in that has a subdivision surface on it, it's kind of a delicate art to kind of understand how it works, but you do kind of get the hang of it. And it takes practice. So your assignment 3, which we'll talk about in a moment, is I want you to use a subdivision surface and sculpting, which we'll talk about momentarily, to make a tree. So let me actually, oops, tab, right click, shade smooth, there we go. I'll show you an alternate view of this. So on your subdivision surface modifier here, there's this little button here on cage, which is not on by default. On cage, adjust edit cage to modifier result. So if you toggle this on, it actually kind of shrink wraps the edges and the faces on top of the subdivided surface. So for a lot of things, like if you're modeling characters or something like that, this is how somebody might do it. So you can kind of see the result a little bit better, or understand what you're grabbing. But it can be a little bit tricky. This is actually kind of turning into a cactus. So I'm doing just E extrude, S to scale down, E extrude. So if I want to turn this off and actually see the shape underneath, I can hit that and you can see what we've been working with. And like just as before, you can like turn off. So actually, and I don't think showed you that. So there's a couple of other buttons here. So this little monitor one is to actually disable it. So you can kind of turn it off and on like this. This one here is to actually turn it off in the render. And this one is display modifier in edit mode. So that means like while you're editing, it won't show it, but if you're in object mode, it will show it. And then of course, if we feel pleased with it and we want to make some adjustments later, or make some like more refined adjustments, we can apply, whoops, and I gotta be in object mode. We can apply this modifier, and now we've actually generated all of this mesh. So if I go tab now, all of these subdivided rounded things are actually here for me to manipulate. And the subdivision modifier is gone. Okay. Oh, one other thing. Delete this. Shift A. So there's one other kind of key point to this, and that is it's called an edge crease. So if I add a subdivision modifier to this, Control 2, and I want to tab to edit this, and let's say I'm making my tree like this. I'm extruding, extruding this out. Maybe I want this to be like a little smaller like this, or I don't know, extrude this out. Edge crease. So like the bottom of a tree or a cactus isn't rounded like this. So there's a way to signal specific edges to not be rounded. And that's by adding a crease. So like imagine this is like a hunk of clay, and you want to actually like kind of pinch the bottom of this so that that clay is not rounded. We add you crease it. You add an edge crease. So back into Blender. So let's select this. Oops, so I'm going to go 2 for edge select. And I'm going to select these bottom 4 here. So I'm going to hold on the shift key and just do click, 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 click. And select that bottom edge. And to add an edge crease, it's hold on the shift key and E. Shift E is edge crease. And it kind of allows you to kind of pull your mouse, and you can choose the intensity of the crease. So you can make it not all the way creased, somewhat creased, or if you pull it all the way, it actually turns it what color? Purple. So on the cage here, it's showing a purple edge means that is an edge crease. So like another place you may want to do it is like here. So if I hold on the shift key and grab these 4 edges, it's like a little bit hidden here. I grab these ones, and I go shift E and kind of pull it out. That's an edge crease. So it's just like a regular joint where those meet. Or like, I don't know, maybe just along the back here, you want this edge to be a crease. You can hold shift and select all those ones. Shift E. Now that's an edge crease. And shade smooth. And so an edge crease, it'll still attempt to smooth out those edges. So again, just like do your best with what was I about to say? Shade smooth will still attempt to smooth out an edge. So there's other ways around it. So actually, let me show you another thing real quick. So previously, you may have used bevel to have something with just like a little bit rounded edges. So let's show that real quick. I'm in object mode. Shift A. I'm adding a cube. Tab for edit mode, and then B for bevel. No, is it B? Is it Shift B? Control B? There we go. Control B for bevel. I'm just going to middle mouse up like this. So to have kind of a rounded box, you might do it like that. And then maybe you can shade smooth. An alternative way to do that, let me just move this out of the way. Shift A, let's add a cube. An alternative way to do that with the subdivision surface would be to add loop cuts. So I did Control 2, I have the subdivision surface modifier on here, tab for edit mode. I'm going to Control R to add a loop cut, and you kind of slide it close to the edge here. So you can see that adding a cut is kind of making it less rounded. because it's the polygons are closer here now at the edge. Now that I've done a cut there, it's the average of it, or kind of the roundness of it, is smaller. This is kind of a hard concept to understand, but the more you do it, the more it kind of makes sense. So like I can add a couple of edge cuts here, control add an edge cut here like this, slide it close to the edge, control add another one here like that, and then do another one here, control here like that. Yeah, okay. And so then you've got a rounded thingamabob here, a rounded cube, using the modifier, the subdivision service modifier. And then you can, whoops, I'm clicking on the wrong window here. Right click, shade smooth. Hello? Right click, shade smooth. There you go. So, it's just variations on the same thing. But the nice thing about a subdivision service modifier is you can always like turn it off, or duplicate it to another object, or delete it, or things like that. Whereas if you're using bevel, you're pretty much stuck with it here. Okay, let's talk about sculpting, and then we'll get into your assignment 3. What am I doing? Let's delete this. Let's delete this. Let's Shift A. I'm gonna actually add a UV sphere, and actually, no, that's fine. UV sphere, and yep, good. Sorry, I'm just trying to think of the best way to do this. Okay, so sculpting. Let's actually, so along the top here, we've always been in layout mode. Maybe you've explored some of these other ones, but let's go over to the sculpting workspace up here. So click on sculpting, and we have our cube here, and you've got a bunch of sculpting tools on the left: to draw sharp, blah 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 blah, like so many different ones. But just start with this first one, draw, and just click and drag on a sphere here. So you can see. By clicking and dragging and kind of moving my mouse around, I am I'm moving the existing polygons. And it's actually it doesn't look great, because what the default method of sculpt does is it only uses existing geometry that's on there. Because it'll just kind of pull it out. You can also, up here along the top, you can change a few things. You can change the strength of your brush. So if you move this up to 1, it's going to be a little bit more dramatic. You can also change the radius of your brush. So you can see that now it's much bigger and stronger. So now I can actually kind of bump this out a little bit. Keyboard shortcut to change your brush size is F. If you tap F, you can move your mouse to make the brush bigger and smaller. So you can make it gigantic like this, tap F to make it smaller, then left click, make it smaller like this. So what's happening here is, or what I'm going to recommend, I guess, is a couple things. Sculpting should be something that happens near the end of making your model. So like for the example of your spooky tree, you'll end up getting the shape of your tree first, and then like subdivide, apply the subdivision, so you've got lots of polygons to work with, and then do some sculpting. So let's talk about that, or I'll show you that right now. So actually, what we can do, I don't even need to delete this. I can just do Control 2, or actually let's go back to Layout Workspace, just so you're familiar with it. Control 2, and maybe Shade Smooth here. So that it's looking nice, and we have lots of polygons to work with, and then go ahead and like apply this just for demonstration's sake. So now if I hit tab, you can see it. We've got lots, like our mesh has a lot of polygons, a lot of faces on it. So this will be great for sculpting. So now if we go over to sculpting, you can see that, ooh, I can have like much more finer sculpting and things like this. So I mean, there's not a whole lot more to say about sculpting here, other than like just play with the tools. So like draw is kind of the main one here, and it's just sort of like it's pulling out the existing polygons, kind of making it a lump. The inverse of any tool is just to hold down the Control key. So like draw pulls it out. If I hold down Control, it pushes it in. It kind of makes a dent. So sculpting is something that, some people have a lot of talent with, and some people don't, including myself. And so here's another thing. So working with a sphere like this where they all meet on the top, you can see that this is a messy bit here, because this is the point where everything meets in the middle. So let me actually just tab. Oops, not tab. Let me go back to my layout workspace. Let me delete this. Shift A, maybe an icosphere is better for this. And maybe you can just up the subdivisions here too, like this, 5. Maybe 5 is good. Cool. And then we can go to sculpting. You can sculpt here like this. Right click, whoops. Oh man, go back to layout, shade smooth, please. There we go. Then go to sculpting. Another cool thing about sculpting is, oops, where are my sculpting tools? Here we go. Is you can mirror things in a particular axis. Oh, sorry, my shade smooth went away. So up here, top right of your viewport here, you can mirror sculpting things in a particular axis. So if you mirror in the Y axis like this, you can see that there's a little matching blue dot that kind of appears on my sphere here. So like anything I do to one side, I can do to the other. So this might be good for character sculpting. Again, I am F to make my thing a little bigger, and then I'm just going to hold down Control and make an eye socket here, and then maybe I'll turn off and make a nose here like this. You guys, I'm not the most like delicate sculptor. Oh no, what have I done? Down the strength, F, make this smaller. Like what does a face even look like? You know, this is not my strong suit. And what I could have done, what I should have done, is turned on my mirror thing again, so it's perfectly symmetrical. Is that a mustache or is that a mouth? I don't know. And look at some hair flowing right here. Oh, but play with some of these tools. I mean, really, everything can be achieved with draw, but there's some good ones here, like snake hook. Let me turn off. So snake hook is like a very dramatic, like we can really pull things out. Or what is this, fill? Oh, yeah, another good one is smooth. So if you hit smooth, it'll just try to kind of remove what you've done. So maybe like F, get a bigger surface here, and it'll just kind of try to even things out. That's smooth. What are some of these other ones? Blob? What does blob do? I don't know. And so the more geometry you have to work with, kind of the more delicate the results of your sculpting. Okay, but notice how what I said was it only works with existing geometry. So when I snake hooked this thing out of his head, it didn't like make new polygons along the way. It just took this one thing and stretched it way out. And so we're left with these like really long, skinny polygons, which can be problematic. So there is something in Blender and in sculpting that you can choose to do. And so if I go back to sculpt mode here like this, it's this button here, Dyn Topo, which is a smash together of the words dynamic topology. So if you check this box, there's a little warning that comes up. You can say, okay, but here is my warning to you is that sculpting and dynamic topology is destructive. So it's not, you can undo it for as many Control Z's as you have. So just again, sculpting is something that should happen near the end of the process. Sculpting is sort of like adding the final details to things. Using modeling tools, get the shapes in right first, and then you can subdivide and sculpt and add those extra details. That's my process recommendation for you. Okay, so what dynamic topology does is it will kind of recreate your faces for you. So actually, just so you can see the difference, I'm gonna turn on my overlays and turn on the wireframe just so you can see it like this. So this is what all of our polygons look like. So with dynamic topology off, it's just kind of moving the existing polygons around. But if I turn dynamic topology on, okay, yep, warning, that's fine. It's going to add more detail. So you can see that as I stroke over different parts of the mesh, it's changing the topology underneath. And it's actually turning everything into nice, neat triangles. Remember how I said, like, computers like triangles because everything is always a triangle anyway. So that's what it's doing. And so it's adding the detail as necessary to my thing as I scroll over it. So if you twirl this down, you can change the detail size. Just be careful. If you crank this way down, it's probably going to crash your computer. You don't want a teeny tiny detail size because it's going to add like hundreds of thousands of polygons and it's going to crash. The other kind of thing to note is it does it based on how close you are to it. So notice how now I'm really far away. It's adding really big polygons. But as I get really close, it's adding teeny tiny polygons like this. So it's based on your closeness of your viewport to the object. So that's dynamic topology. Experiment with it if you want. It can be like super duper handy, but just kind of it's good to understand how it works before you do it. And experiment with the different tools too. Crease. Okay. So now, let's talk about, I want to go for another 15 minutes-ish. What I want you to do now is pause the video. And I want you to start, like, think of how you would oh, actually, no, we gotta talk about assignment 3 first. Okay, so don't pause yet. Assignment 3, spooky tree. Create a spooky tree using modeling tools and techniques and sculpting. Use some reference images. Don't be afraid to think outside of the box. This is worth 17 points. You get 5 points for use of modeling techniques, 5 points for use of sculpting, 2 points for submitting a render, and 5 points for an on-time submission and shared with the class. So again, just remember, like, on-time submission and shared with the class can be as simple as you're uploading it to D2L and you write it 2 or 3 sentences about it, just about how it went, what you liked, what you didn't like, whatever. You can also share that verbally when we Zoom as well. Because remember, it's, in my opinion, being able to talk about your work and share your work with others is integral to growing as a creator, as an artist. Okay, again, my description of this is pretty broad, and you can very easily get 100% on this with minimal effort, but I encourage you to spend time on it. Maybe you start over. Maybe you try a few different things. Maybe you kind of continue on this and make it a little bit more interesting. So I'll show you like a very basic way of how I would start this, just like a spooky dead tree. Next week, we'll kind of build on it a little bit. There'll be a couple optional things in next week's lecture that you can do as well, but you pretty much have enough to get started with this week, or to get finished with it this week if you wish. But like some people also like put it in a graveyard and they made tombstones in years past, or they like actually like put a face on it and it was like you guys remember the old, like super old school from the 1940s, the Snow White, where it's like the trees have like hands and they're like reaching out and there's a face on the tree and it's like an actual spooky tree. But anyway, so you can just do your super basic thing and get it done, get your points, or you can F around and find out and like experiment with some things, try some cool things. Okay, so now with this in mind, I'm going to show you how I would start this assignment, but I want you to pause the video now and try starting it yourself. And just like experiment with it, like don't spend too much time, just like start with a cube or start with the cylinder or something basic, and just start to extrude, start to get the shape of a tree. Maybe try to use a subdivision surface modifier, or maybe you have a symmetrical tree and you want a mirror modifier or something like that. Once you feel like you've kind of done enough on your own, come back to the video and I'll show you how I would start it. So go ahead and pause now. Okay, so step one for me is I'm doing an image search for spooky tree. And I'm just trying to get some sort of inspiration. I'm not going to try to like copy these exactly. But you know, just I'm looking for something like kind of like this, maybe like this spooky tree. So it's like a dead tree that's, you know, has kind of some crazy limbs like this. I'm not even going to add this much detail. But maybe I'll just keep this open in a nearby monitor, and as I do this. So I'll go, actually let me do File, New, General, don't save. And why don't I start with the cube? Okay. I'm just going to go into edit mode. So I'm probably going to start with, let me change this too. Nope, not that. Here we go. I'm just going to start with like a very basic primitive shapes. So I'm going to go 3, 4, 3 for face select. I'm just going to kind of extrude, maybe like scale this down. Just going to kind of rough it out. I'm going to work kind of quickly like this. And another thing that'll probably come in handy with this is doing some proportional editing. So I'm going to turn this on, and I'm going to G, but like kind of up my mouse wheel like this, and just kind of make this a little bit crooked, and maybe kind of G rotate it like this a little bit. Turn off my proportional editing. And maybe I'll actually add a loop cut here like this. And I'm going to 3 for face select and kind of start to extrude this out here a little bit. Scale that down, extrude, you know, scale that down, move it up a little bit, maybe kind of move it over this way. So that they're kind of, or actually, and that's whoops, didn't mean to do that. Close that. Undo. Maybe I'll just kind of extrude this a few times here like this, extrude. And then I'll turn on my proportional editing again in G, and I'll G move it this way like that. Maybe I'll R rotate it this way like that, yeah, and then I'll maybe S scale it down so it kind of gets smaller like that, yeah, okay. Maybe I'll also have a branch that kind of comes out this way. I'm going to extrude, extrude. Trying to have like, you know, just a few different segments so that, you know, I can get some kind of twists and turns that I like. Then maybe I'll actually roll my middle mouse wheel up a little bit like that, and kind of R rotate, and whoops, didn't mean to delete that. Oops, undo. There we go. G, move it here like this. S, scale it down. Maybe move it a little closer. All right, let's continue this path up a little bit. E, extrude. Maybe I'll like R rotate and kind of give it a little twist like this. Oh yeah, that kind of looks cool. S, scale it down. Oops, and my proportional editing was kind of catching this limb, so I should probably middle mouse wheel in and scale it like that. And E, I'll just go make that a little smaller, and G, kind of move it, and R, rotate a little like that. Sure. Maybe I'll have like just like a couple other branches that come out. Let me Control R. I'm gonna add a loop cut here because I want it to be a little bit smaller. And the reason I'm loop cutting is like if I extrude here, this is like a really like fat branch, and so I'm just adding a loop cut with Control R to kind of get a polygon here like this, a face like that. That's sort of a more manageable size. So actually, maybe I'll even do this one here. Extrude. And turn off proportional. Is there a keyboard shortcut for that? No. Maybe there should be. Let's scale this down. And maybe I'll actually kind of R rotate this and kind of G move it like that, and E extrude. Whoops, I think I did that too far. I think my extrusion should maybe be a little bit smaller like this. I'll turn on proportional editing, S scale this down. S scale this down. And kind of G move it this way, and R rotate it this way. How we doing? I'll just get like a couple more little funny branches out here. So I'm going to Control R, add another loop cut here, 3 for face select, E extrude this one out, S, turn off proportional editing, S going to scale this down. If the speed of this is like throwing you off a little bit, don't worry, because I've been doing this for a little while. I've also done this assignment a few times before, and you'll get there. Take it at your own pace. Okay. Maybe I'll do like one more here like this. Maybe I'll Control R, add a loop cut here. And maybe I should make, I'll do 3. I should make this one a little bit longer. G. And maybe I'll extrude this one out. E extrude, S scale, E, S, G, R, oops, not T, R, E, S, G. Sometimes I use proportional editing and sometimes I don't. G, G. There we go. Okay, and I just need like, I need this one to be just a little bit taller up here. Okay, and let's do like one more over here. 3 for face select. E to extrude, S to scale down. Maybe we'll rotate it this way a little bit. So your default transform tools, just remember, are based on your perspective, unless you're signaling an axis. So that's why I'm kind of like coming at it. I'm changing my view on it quite a bit. Like I'm looking down, or I'm looking up, or from the side. So I'm just trying to get a little bit of variety in my angles here. Turning proportional editing on. It's already on. S to scale it down. R to rotate it down like this, G to move it up. Okay, what do you think? Just like super basic to start. Great. Don't forget to save. I'm like so bad at saving. Let me save this. Control S. This is... I installed a new drive on my computer and my data. Tech. Spring 23. Okay, this is spooky tree. Save Blender file. Okay, don't forget to save. Okay. And also behind my head here, I'm gonna just name this tree. Whoops, didn't click it right. Tree. And maybe also just for fun. Whoops, guys, I'm going crazy. Okay. I'm going to Shift A, add a ground plane. Not a cube. Undo. Shift A, add a plane. And scale this up. This is going to be my ground plane. Ground. Okay. So I got like the base shape of my tree here. Now, I am choosing to add my subdivision surface modifier. So I'm going to go Control 2, like this. And I'm going to right-click Shade Smooth. So like... right now it looks like deer antlers. But I'm going to add some creases. So real quick, tab for edit mode. And actually I should turn off my ground. First, I'm going to go 2 for edge select, and I'm going to select my bottom edges and do Shift E, add an edge crease like that. All the way. The next thing I'll probably do is I'll add a couple of edge creases. You can even do X-ray select so you can see it a little better. It might get a little bit dicey. But I'm going to add an edge crease here, Shift E. Maybe. I'll see how that works. Maybe add an edge crease here, Shift E. I'm just kind of doing it at the tops where the branches come out because I maybe want them to like have a little bit more of a natural sort of separation. Or like, you know what I could do is just like have it go all the way around. You might experiment with this, see what you like. Grab these edges here, Shift E, have an edge crease like that. Or maybe it makes sense to like just do the ones around the top. Let me turn off X-ray select. And you know what might even be helpful here is if you go to your modifiers tab and you do this on edit on cage, so you can actually select these edges a little bit more easily. Select those 3 and Shift E, make that an edge crease. What else can we do? How about like these ones here? Maybe just this one, Shift E. I'm just kind of experimenting with it. No, I think it looks better with 3 sides selected like that. Shift E, edge crease. All the ones along the top. And my thinking is, I don't want this to be a crease here because I kind of want it to seem like they're sort of branching out. Maybe I will do X-ray select a little bit more now. And so like these feel like a little bit too rigid. So I might just kind of, oops, I don't want proportional editing. I might Kind of rotate it like this and kind of G move these in like this, and maybe I do want proportional editing. I kind of want to rotate like that and G move it up like that. Maybe? I don't know. Select these ones. G, R. Just trying to get a feel for it. Selecting these ones. G, R, G. Okay, so I've got my edge creases in. The next step for me, let me turn off X-ray select, is probably going to be to sculpt. So right now it still just kind of looks like a blob, but the sculpting is what's going to kind of give it this like natural-ish look, and also maybe make it look a little spookier. So I'm going to go to my sculpting tab here, and actually what I should do is maybe I'll even let's apply this. Let's apply the subdivision surface modifier like this. And I just want to kind of see what we're working with. Yeah, and I'm going to undo that. I'm actually going to make it 3. And then apply this, because I want a lot of faces to work with like this. Yeah. And what I could do is I could go into my sculpting and turn on dynamic topology. I'm going to try not to do that for right now. And so what I'm going to do, maybe I'll even turn on my ground again, and I'm just going to I'm going to up the strength here, and I'm going to try to kind of make this, look a little bit more natural. So I'm going to make my brush a little bigger here, and I'm just going to kind of widen out the base of my trunk a little bit like this. I'm going to start with larger movements, and then I'm going to kind of make my brush a little smaller, and I'm just going to try to like have kind of some like veins that go all the way down the side of my tree like this. So I'm just going to kind of look at different angles and just kind of start to drag, like thinking about how the bark of a tree works, or like how a tree grows. So I'm just kind of like, whoops. And maybe I will turn off my ground like this so I can kind of get better angles. Maybe I'll get a little closer and I'll just kind of, add a few things like this. Maybe I'll kind of go all the way out to the edge. Start to kind of drag down like this. And, it's natural, so it doesn't have to be perfect. And like, I'm just kind of messing with it. I'm just experimenting. Maybe have something go down like this. I'm kind of thinking about the flow of how a tree would grow. Maybe I'll get in a little bit closer, and I'll make my brush a little smaller. I have like some more details that kind of come down the tree like this. And it's spooky too, so it can be like kind of twisted like this. Yeah. Go out here like this. I think the edges they don't come into like the points of these are a little bit too neat. So maybe what I need, and kind of get at it from all angles. I'm just kind of sculpting. I'm just using the basic draw tool. Just kind of add a little bit of life to it. Feel free to turn on the dynamic topology if you want. I'm going to try not to now, for no really good reason. So I'll spend a little bit of time on this, and maybe the next step would be, maybe I take the like the snake hook, or maybe I'll even grab and like just kind of get the ends of these. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that one too. Getting my draw out to like this. Just trying to kind of connect all the different pieces, all the different branches that come out. So it's starting to look like a tree. Some of these areas are way too thick. Like right here, I probably did too strong of a thing. So maybe I'll F, and I'll hold down the control key and kind of undo this a little bit. Just kind of squish that in. It's starting to look a little bit freaky, so I might need to revisit that. But maybe it works for the spooky tree. And then, okay, maybe the last bit I do, maybe I grab like this, and I just take some of these and just kind of like make them a little crooked like this. Make them a little bit twisted. That kind of really adds to the spookiness of it. So I can kind of grab these and twist them around a little bit. Kind of makes it a little scragglier, a little funkier. You can kind of grab the end of these. Oh yeah, that's a good little end there. These kind of bunch up a little bit. Yeah, cool. So it's like a really twisted looking tree. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I'm over I'm at an hour and 4 minutes. So this is this is my method that I would do. And then maybe I would add maybe I'd add a texture to it. Try to find like a wood, like a bark texture or something like that, or maybe not. Maybe it's just brown. Anyway, so that's it for this week. Get started on your spooky tree. Have some fun with it. Experiment it. Next week I'll show you a couple more things, the kind of optional things that you can do with your tree. The topics next week are UV editing, so editing image textures on top of an object, and I'll also show you about particles. So, like for assignment 3, particles are sort of like random things, not random things necessarily, but like if you wanted to put grass on the ground, and you wanted to have like lots of blades of grass, that's a particle effect. Or if you actually wanted to put a few like dead leaves on this tree, rather than having individual leaves that you're modeling, you could use a leaf particle that is multiplied several times around it. So next week we'll talk about UV editing and particles. Please email if you have questions. Otherwise, have fun, good luck, and we'll see you in next week's lecture.